September 1567, Japan. Under the cover of night, with only the moonlight guiding their steps, 7 men are climbing a cliff. They stop for a moment to drink water from their gourds, and then continue their climb. Their goal? To infiltrate the impregnable castle at the top. A tree is blocking their way on the steep path, but their robust guide and a second smaller man move it aside. This smaller and weak-looking man doesn't appear that he would fit in a commando raid, but the conception and success of this operation depends on him. His name is Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the man who would rise from humble peasant origins to becoming the de facto ruler of Japan. This video is made available for free thanks to our YouTube members and patrons. We fund our free content through our program of exclusive videos made for our members and patrons, who get 2 documentaries per week not available to the public. Join their ranks and watch the series on the Albigensian Crusade, Fall of Sparta, First Punic War, Italian Reunification Wars, History of Prussia, Biography of Sulla, Russo-Japanese War, Reconquista, Persian Wars and War of Spanish Succession, and much more. All this is made for and with generous donations from our backers. So if you're enjoying our content and want to see more and support the cause of history, consider becoming a YouTube member or patron. Join their ranks via the link in the description and pinned comment to learn our schedule, get early access to all videos, voting rights on future videos, and much more. You will be able to watch more than 100 exclusive videos today. Thanks for supporting us. Born in the early months of 1536, Hideyoshi was the son of a farmer named Yemon, who lived in a small village in the province of Owari near modern-day Nagoya. His father, in the spirit of the age, was also a part-time soldier, serving in the armies of the local warlord Oda Nobunaga. While Yemon's life as a foot soldier did put him in a better financial state compared to other peasants, he was, socially speaking, still far away from the ruling samurai class, and theoretically his descendants couldn't hope to achieve much greater heights in life. In an age of constant warfare and bloodshed, being in the military was also extremely dangerous, and at the age of 7, Hideyoshi was orphaned. Not much else is known about his childhood, but we know that when young Hideyoshi turned 15, he sought to follow in his father's footsteps and become a soldier under the command of one of the retainers of Imagawa Yoshimoto. This was an odd maneuver, as the Imagawa clan was a rival of the Oda, the family his father had served diligently for years. But Hideyoshi had ambitions above his station, and Yoshimoto was one of the biggest names in Japan during that time. So powerful, in fact, that he was considered one of the few men capable of overthrowing the shogunate and assuming the title for himself. Hideyoshi's servitude under the Imagawa banner wouldn't last for long, and after 7 years, he sought employment from a young, ambitious, and ruthless warlord, Oda Nobunaga. This change of heart, as it turned out, couldn't have come at a more convenient time. Just 2 years later, in 1560, Imagawa Yoshimoto decided to march on the capital city of Kyoto and assume true power for himself by bending the Ashikaga shogun to his will. The road to Kyoto passed through the Oda domain, and the two sides would clash in a series of battles, with the largest and most pivotal being that at Okehazama. There, Nobunaga achieved an unexpected and heroic victory, annihilating the vastly larger Imagawa forces, with Yoshimoto perishing in the fight. We don't know with certainty if Hideyoshi participated in the fighting, but as Nobunaga was in need of every man he could muster, it is very likely that he did. The invading Imagawa army had made camp at the gorge of Okehazama, and according to some sources, Yoshimoto and his men, following their recent victories, were indulging themselves with some partying and drinking. But while Yoshimoto, full of himself, was celebrating an early victory, the Oda troops, vastly more familiar with the land, moved around Nagashima Castle, and by a route that passed through the rice fields, managed to pass undetected to the Imagawa forces' rear. According to the legend that surrounds the battle, the Oda troops assaulted the Imagawa camp, charging down from a hill while a thunderstorm was raging on, masking their movements. Yoshimoto's men, caught completely by surprise, offered little resistance. If Hideyoshi fought in the battle, then he must have been amidst the bloodshed that ensued, as Oda Ashigaru and samurai slaughtered their enemies, including the Imagawa daimyo. At that point, the morale of the invading Imagawa forces completely collapsed, and they were routed from the battlefield. heading back to their home province of Suruga. Following the spectacular victory at Okehazama, Nobunaga consolidated his power in Owari and began a long and bloody campaign to subjugate the neighbouring Mino province ruled by the Saito clan. During this time, and through his brilliant achievements, Hideyoshi would rise to fame and become one of Nobunaga's most trusted advisors and generals. Nobunaga's preference towards Hideyoshi can be seen by his appointment as a sandal bearer, whose duty, as the name implies, was to carry his lord's sandals and keep them warm. This was considered a prestigious position, as Hideyoshi would accompany his lord everywhere. But warming footwear wasn't the only item on Hideyoshi's to-do list. He would also take on and succeed in every task that was delegated to him, such as the reconstruction of Kyushu Castle. But where Hideyoshi truly shined was military affairs. Saito's main stronghold, Inabayama Castle, was a formidable mountain fortress, and because of the geography of the region, the most effective approach was from Tsunemata. According to legends, Hideyoshi proposed the construction of a fortification there, a task he would undertake and, with the help of a bandit named Hachisuka Masakatsu, complete overnight. This apocryphal tale clearly exaggerates Hideyoshi's siegecraft ability, which was nonetheless astonishing. Even with using pre-constructed parts, the fortifications at Tsunemata would take several days to be constructed, and when finished, they would be a far cry from the traditional Japanese castle that comes to mind, instead resembling more of a fort, with moats, wooden palisades and watchtowers, a sight that, despite its humble looks, caused some panic among the Saito retainers. Another tale of the time tells us of how Hideyoshi was able to enlist under his service the master tactician Takenaka Shigeharu, also known as Hanbei. The most likely fictitious account states that Hideyoshi visited the renowned strategist who lived in solitude on Mount Kurihara and successfully convinced him to join the Oda camp after meeting him 3 times, an act reminiscent of Zhuge Liang's recruitment by Liu Bei in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Finally, it was time for the final assault at Inabayama, and Hideyoshi's contribution to the capture of Inabayama had him leading a literal commando raid inside the castle. As a frontal assault on the impregnable Saito stronghold was deemed suicidal, alternatives, including bribery, were explored. But Hideyoshi, in his usual outgoing and likable fashion, had befriended the son of a local farmer named Horio after seeing him wrestling with a boar. Horio revealed to Hideyoshi the existence of a goat path leading up the cliffside of the mountain to the north of the castle, and in turn, Hideyoshi told his lord of his plan to lead a select group of men into the fortress to open the gates for Nobunaga's main force from the inside. Nobunaga gave his permission, and during the night, guided by Horio and using only the moonlight to see, Hideyoshi's men scaled the cliff and entered Inabayama unnoticed. Just before dawn, the brave commandos came out of their hiding spots and began causing havoc by lighting fires which spread panic among the castle's garrison. Hideyoshi and his men then climbed the walls and tied the gourds they used as water canteens on the tip of their spears to signal Nobunaga that the plan was a success. Oda's main force soon swept up the mountain and promptly captured Inabayama, which became Nobunaga's new main seat of power and was renamed Gifu. To celebrate and remember this great victory, Hideyoshi adopted the gourd as his battle standard, and popular tales often tell that for each victory gained, he would add another one, thus famously creating the 1,000 golden gourd standard. In 1570, 2 years after Nobunaga's march on Kyoto, which had made him shogun in all but name, his rival daimyos had had enough of Oda rule, and so began a 3-year-long campaign of Nobunaga versus virtually every other clan. Azai, Asakura, Rikaku, Takeda, Miyoshi, Matsunaga, and the 2 most powerful temples, the Inryakuji of Mount Hiei and Ishiyama Honganji at Osaka. Hideyoshi, the rising star of the Oda army, was naturally at the heart of these campaigns. From this year onward, Hideyoshi's life is recorded with greater detail, and legend gives way to facts. This is not a coincidence, as from one of his letters during that time, we learn that the man had been elevated to generalship and was now in command of 3,000 men. 1570 was also the year of another of Hideyoshi's fabled triumphs. As Nobunaga's troops marched into Echizen province to attack the Asakura capital at Ichijo-dani, they were betrayed by their Azai allies and found themselves trapped on both sides. With the enemy fast approaching Kanegasaki Castle, where the Oda camp was located, Nobunaga was forced to flee, following a mountain road. Hideyoshi, having a cunning plan, would defend Nobunaga's rear and delay the Asakura Azai forces as much as he could. He gave orders to his men to erect numerous flags around the castle, even keeping Nobunaga's personal standard, and to light more fires during the night so as to give the impression of a larger force. The Azai and Asakura forces fell for the trick and decided to set up camp for the night and to attack the following day. Taking advantage of this, Hideyoshi launched a sudden assault on the Asakura camp just before dawn, threw their army into disarray, and even managed to get a hefty amount of spoils before ultimately retreating all the way to Kyoto's safety, sporadically fighting off the enemy troops. He would return to Omi province to fight once more against the Azai-Asakura alliance in the Battle of Anigawa, successfully leading his troops for the first time in the open field. Hideyoshi would be present at the siege of Odani Castle, the Azai clan's stronghold, 3 years later, and for his contributions thus far, he would be rewarded with some of their lands in the rich Omi province that was valued at 120,000 koku. In 1573, he would assist his daimyo in the second siege of Nagashima against the militant monks. Hideyoshi led a diversionary force from the west, while Nobunaga's main body, which included his arquebusiers, committed to a frontal assault. However, because of the rainy weather, the gunpowder became damp, rendering the firearms nearly useless. This surprising turn of events allowed the Iko-Iki to launch a decisive counterattack, smashing the Oda forces with their own arquebuses and forcing Nobunaga to retreat until the next year. Hideyoshi, now a daimyo, would attentively develop the lands he was given. Special care was given to the firearms factory in Kunitomo that had been established earlier jointly by the Azai and the Asakura, and under Hideyoshi's guidance, the factory was expanded, and its production dramatically increased to satisfy the needs of Nobunaga's army. These firearms certainly came in handy in 1575, when the combined Oda Tokugawa forces fought off the mighty Takeda cavalry in Nagashino, one of the greatest battles in Japanese history, which we've covered in great detail in our video on Oda Nobunaga. Over the coming years, Hideyoshi would be at the forefront, fighting where Nobunaga needed him the most, like the siege against the warrior monks of Ishiyama Hongenji, or the Battle of Todorigawa against Uesugi Kenshin. But of these later wars in service of Nobunaga, there was one that would change Hashiba Hideyoshi's life forever: the Chugoku campaign against the powerful Mori clan of Aki province. The Mori and their allies controlled the western part of Honshu, and because of the narrow geography of the region, armies didn't have much room to maneuver around fortified positions. Combined with their military might, it meant that a war against the Mori would take many years, even for the most brilliant of generals. In 1577, Nobunaga entrusted this campaign to two of his best generals, Hideyoshi and Akechi Mitsuhide. Mitsuhide would advance with his forces along the northern Sanindo Road, attacking through Wakasa and Tamba provinces. While initially both men were successful, the difference in their caliber as generals would soon become apparent. Hideyoshi, who was a master at siegecraft and possessed of a silver tongue, continued advancing further west, albeit at a slow but steady pace, either by directly assaulting the castles that stood on his path or by bribing their commanders. On the other hand, Mitsuhide's progress came to a grinding halt at Tamba, where he faced stiff resistance. When Hideyoshi entered Harima province, he had a hidden ace, Kuroda Yoshitaka, better known in Japanese history as Kuroda Kanbei, a brilliant political and military strategist. Kanbei had realized the Oda, not the Mori, were the clan to bet on, and had offered his services to Hideyoshi and Nobunaga. He had even promised to act as a diplomatic mediator for the bloodless capture of Himeji Castle, which belonged to his father-in-law Kidera Masamoto. Himeji, which stands to this day, would indeed be turned over in 1580, and after remodeling it, Hideyoshi would use it as his personal residence. With Kanbei's assistance, Harima province was secured quickly, with Hideyoshi besieging any castles that defied him, the most important of which was Kazuki on the western border of the province, commanded by Akimetsu Masanori. The castle would change hands the following year, as Hideyoshi had suffered a major setback and did not have enough troops to defend it. Besho Nagaharu, who owned Miki Castle, had rebelled against Nobunaga, seemingly out of his hate towards Hashiba Hideyoshi and his humble origins, and perhaps due to a massacre committed by his troops against the garrison and the civilians of Kazuki. 5 months later, he was joined by Araki Murashige. In the face of such a danger threatening his rear, Hideyoshi had to return to eastern Harima and put down the rebellion. In 1580, he was finally able to take Miki, though not everything went according to his plan, as Nagaharu chose to commit seppuku rather than pledge his loyalty to the Oda. Meanwhile, Araki had managed to escape from the siege of Itami Castle, where he was held up, and had found refuge at the court of Mori Teramoto. With that matter settled, Hideyoshi was now able to continue his campaign westwards to Bizen province. He would do so without his close friend and chief strategist Takenaka Hanbei, who had passed away the year prior due to chronic illness. Thankfully, military action against Bizen was not needed. The daimyo of the province, Ukita Noye, who also owned the neighbouring Mimasaka province, having witnessed the fate of Besho Nagaharu, was more than willing to submit to Nobunaga's rule. Therefore, Hideyoshi ordered him to resist any attacks from Mori Teramoto's forces, while he himself moved north to Inaba province to lay siege at the castle of Tottori, owned by Yamada Toyokuni, who promptly fled, leaving command to Kikawa Tsuneye. Tsuneye, however, was a general directly under the service of the Mori clan, and was thus determined to hold Tottori to the bitter end. As offers of peaceful surrender fell on deaf ears, Hideyoshi would show a rare fit of merciless brutality. First, he drove the peasants from nearby villages into the besieged castle to impose a heavier tax on its food reserves. Then he built towers every 500 meters along the perimeter of the castle, and bought all the rice produced by the province. He then simply waited for the garrison to starve to death. His arquebusiers shot anyone who dared to venture outside the castle, yet the garrison still refused to surrender. This lasted for over 200 days, until the besieged men were forced to eat their dead comrades. It was then that Tsuneye agreed to surrender and took his own life. Following these successes, Hideyoshi deemed it proper to visit Nobunaga and exchange gifts to stay on the Oda warlord's good side. After spending some time with his family in early 1582, he marched again to the front. Subjugating the island province of Oweji in just 20 days, he moved towards his main goal, Bichu province. There, not far from the border, he would encounter his first obstacle, the castle of Takamatsu, which Shimizu Muneharu held. As in previous times, Hideyoshi initially offered a diplomatic solution, enticing Muneharu to switch sides in exchange for lordship over all of Bichu province. While the offer was extremely good, Muneharu remained loyal to his Mori overlord. The siege would not be easy, as the castle was located advantageously on a small hill that was surrounded by completely flat terrain. The river Ashimori that flowed to the west and a large moat also contributed to the fortress's defences. But Hideyoshi was a master of siegecraft and would turn the castle's advantages into his own. Thus he filled large bags with sand and raised a large bank on the south side of the castle, while also digging a channel to divert the water from the river towards Takamatsu. As the rainy season arrived in June, the water created an artificial lake around the castle, cutting it off from the outside world. The flooding plan had worked, and the castle was hardly inhabitable, so the garrison of Takamatsu sought outside help. The threat Hideyoshi posed was deemed big enough for Mori Teramoto to intervene by personally leading a relief force. Upon hearing this, Hideyoshi sent a messenger to Oda Nobunaga in Kyoto to request reinforcement for the upcoming and possibly decisive battle against the Mori. Nobunaga dispatched Akechi Mitsuhide, but Mitsuhide would never come to Hideyoshi's aid. For reasons we are not completely sure of, he turned on his master. Nobunaga and his eldest son Nobutada perished during Mitsuhide's coup. The flames of Honnoji had thrown not just the Oda clan, but the entire country off balance. By a stroke of luck, Hideyoshi intercepted a messenger that Mitsuhide sent to Teramoto to forge an alliance. Informed of Nobunaga's passing and the power vacuum that had occurred in the Gulf of the Oda clan, Hideyoshi moved quickly and decisively. He hastily concluded a peace treaty with the Mori on seemingly good terms for them. They had to surrender the provinces of Mimisake, Bitchu and Hoki, lands that were essentially already controlled by the Oda. Unaware of the events surrounding Honnoji, Teramoto agreed, and Hideyoshi force-marched his army, covering the distance from Takamatsu to Kyoto in just 5 days. There, at Yamazaki, he would seek to avenge his master's death and pick up the mantle of authority for himself. In our next video, Hideyoshi's rise to power continues. To ensure you don't miss that, subscribe and press the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we have started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.